to dedicate this to you, the Most High. Everything is done in your name. Hello. I'd like to talk more. I recently published a video trying to elucidate why learning the art of astrology might not be the correct course of action for you. And today I would like to refute that. But with, exceptions. Yeah, with certain, restrictions or limitations. Mainly because I do believe that it's very, an incredible thing to grasp. An incredible tool that you can use to, do a lot, or think of a lot, perhaps expand a lot intellectually. And again, I also published a video saying don't think too much. I still think that. But sometimes thinking is what will allow you to realize why maybe you shouldn't think so much. See, I think the phrase is all roads lead to Rome, all streams lead to the ocean. So, what are the restrictions on learning astrology? I think that they should be learning astrology about you. What does that mean? Horoscopes, personal horoscopes, everything like that. Don't learn those. Don't learn them yet. I'm not saying never learn them. It's fascinating. But learn all of just the basics and really understand the basics. But don't learn the basics in a sense so that you can then interpret them for yourself or for others. Learn the basics and realize how crazy and monumental it is to be able to with a degree of certainty extrapolate what is a life out of what is a circle or sometimes a rectangle. And realizing that whomever is born on the planet Earth can be seen through this light, or in this light, maybe is a better way to phrase that pun. So, just thoughts. With that being said, I'd like to segue into light. God spoke and he said, "Let there be light." This is an incredible phrase and an incredible understanding of life. Life as we know it, and nature. Because through this phrase, through the phrasing, you can almost glean that light is somehow an extension of what is already an extension from God, is speaking. The fact that he was able to speak, and whatever that might mean symbolically. So through my eyes and from my ears, what I heard and saw through that phrase was, there is God, there is an extension of God, And then there's a further extension of that extension. Light is the extension of an extension of the One, the Great Lord, the Most High. How does that impact your daily life? I have no idea. I don't really know. I'm not going to try and know. But I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting when you then, trailing back to astrology, think of what's the bringer of light. And I know when I say that, all of you theologians might have just said Lucifer, because that literally is what that means. But in astrology, there's really one luminary that produces the light. And you probably said sun in your head. And this is interesting because the sun is the king. I want to say that again. Because again, those very theologians that just heard me with their ears perking up, they might perk up again when I say the sun is the king. Who's the sun? Who is the sun? And I'm not, maybe you're hearing this and you're going, okay, yeah, this is astrotheology. And I think this is an important thing to realize and think about, but it's also our real life. All of that is trying to explain our real waking life. It was science prior to secularism. So these are just thoughts. This is just a podcast. So yeah. Yea is the Lord. Also, since we're on the topic, I cannot help but now see some interesting philological correspondences with the word Jesus and the word Zeus. Just an interesting similarities, and I know if you trail them back philologically, they don't. It can be argued that they don't, have the same roots, though. If you're privy to the theorized construction of the Indo-European language, because this is a theory, there aren't writings of what would be Proto-Indo-European. We are just kind of trying to connect the dots with that. But though I think it's interesting, the Latin Jesus and the Romanized Latin Zeus. Mainly because J, I know this because my name starts with a J, originally never existed. It's one of the newer, if not the newest, consonant sounds. And it really derives from the root sound of D-Y-E, du. That is the same thing that ends up becoming Z, zu, D-I, Deus, and J, Jupiter, or I guess Zeus, sorry, I misspoke. Zeus is Greek. Hellenic, Greek. But Jupiter is Romanized Latin, or Roman. Jupiter. We say Jupiter because we have the consonant J, though originally it may have sounded, and this is speculation, more akin to Dios Petto. And if you know Latin, then you heard Sky Father right there. Dios Petto. So, going back to Jesus, Diosos? Diosos. It's just interesting. It's just interesting. I also don't know what I'm talking about. There's that. Sometimes I have been in situations prior where I'm showing a magic trick because I'm a magician. And it made people vocalize to me that it is changing or hindering their it is making them question their beliefs. And that is one thing that I want to not do. So I just want to put things on the table, and whether you care to play with them or not is up to you. I'd like to go into the next topic. I want to talk about yugas, grand cycles. Again, this is going into astrology, but this isn't really astrology. This is more calendrics, ancient or classical calendrics, and which is arguably more fascinating than astrology. Because literally we could not have them if it weren't for them. We couldn't have astrological basis fundamentally if we didn't have calendrics first. So if you want to learn astrology, learn calendrics first before you're thinking of interpretations and all that. And that is, if I am going to tell you to do anything, that's what I'm going to tell you to do. Because it's a silly, funny science, and obviously it's you don't have to take me seriously or anything like that, because I'm a fool. But I'd like to go into this idea of yugas, because a lot of people like to say that we're in the Kali Yuga, and I don't agree. But I'm not completely sold on my own theory yet, because I haven't seen yet, though I haven't looked hard, the process of the yugas. Essentially, the process of the yugas will go something like Satya Yuga, which is the golden age, essentially. Then there's Trenta, Devapra, and Kali. Is it Trenta or Treta? One of these words. I could be mispronouncing it. Kali is the shortest, with 1,000 years, and that's an interesting idea. Think about where you might have heard 1,000 years before. Just saying. And then Devapra is 2,000 years, Trenta is 3,000 years, and Satya is 4,000 years. That's the golden age. The golden age is where people live forever, not really forever, but like thousands of years compared to modern life. And then it slowly declines because that's the degradation of life. Or that's like a common entropy, entropy, you've heard that, physics. And so that's just the steady decline. We were in the golden age at one point, and then it goes to the, I'll say silver age, and then perhaps we'll say, honestly, it's like a information age, and then the dark age. And I think, and I could be wrong, that it is supposed to then just wrap back into the Golden Age from the Kali. It's supposed to be like a huge purification moment, and then it goes right back into the Satya Yuga. Satya Yuga. I don't know if I am theorizing that this is not the case, and solely because of how pendulums work. And it would make a interesting... It just makes sense with how they've laid out the time scales of the yugas, that it would work in a pendulum motion, which is not to say linear, but in a somehow gyroscopic pendular motion. Perhaps that's a toroid. I don't know. These are all just complex ideas rushing through my head. And I'm just trying to express it in a more concise way. But it would make sense that it works more like pendulums. So instead of going from Kali right to Satya, we would go from Kali back into Devapra, and then from Devapra into back into Satya. And the points of the slowest motion, if you know how pendulums work, are where? Where do you reach terminal velocity? At pendulums. Yeah, that's where. So it would only make sense that, or at least it doesn't only make sense. The other makes sense, just not to me, yet. But it would appear that instead of going from Kali to Satya, we'd go from Kali to Devapra to Trenta to Satya, then back down to Trenta, Devapra to Kali, and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And here is another reason why I want to make this argument, and it is because of just how our society is ran now compared to how it was just a few hundred years ago, and or maybe 1,000 years ago. In the Kali Yuga, there are planetary associations, and now, if you don't know astrology, this is where you might want to learn it. But again, not for personalization or individuation, for harmony. Anywho, there are planetary indicators for each of these ages, and you can just derive what those ages might look like if you understand the planetary associations. Doesn't mean that that's the only thing. Excuse me, carbonation, which I hear is no good for you. Though, anywho, the planets associated with each yuga, they're going to be like the overarching energy of each yuga. You know how, like in a story, there's the overarching plot, and then you have subplots underneath it potentially, if it's that kind of writing. So the overarching plot for these yugas could go something like, and now there are different interpretations on this, so you don't have to take what I'm saying for granted. In fact, I don't want you to. Be skeptical and be blind. Follow only, both rely on your neighbor and also be skeptical. So Kali would be ruled by Mars, so think about anything that's Mars. And that is probably what's going to occur during the Kali Yuga. Martian-like ideas, Martian-like qualities and leaders, or essentially, and you can think of it like this too, whatever class is then associated with that planet will probably be the ruling class. Because that's just how it just happens. That's ecology. If you think of Mars, you probably think warriors. And you could go back into history and see how we had warrior kings. Yeah? Okay. The antithesis of Mars is Venus. And so I would also argue that then those qualities are both emphasized and demeaned at the same time, because that's what happens to opposites. Because of the fact that they are so opposite, they cannot be, you can only see them. Like, literally, if you are at the opposite end of the circle, the most glaringly obvious part is not you, it is the other thing in front of you. And that's 180 degrees. Anywho, that's Venus. Mars, the antithesis of Venus, is Mars. You can see this through astrological theory or zodiacal theory. Just think about every sign that opposes Mars, or every sign that is ruled by Mars is opposed by every sign that's ruled by Venus. And we can also see that, I think, in our not necessarily our modern life, but in back in history. You know, the either subjugation of the Venusian qualities and the emphasis of the Venusian qualities. Because I believe that ultimately you need the opposite qualities to then kind of lift into the next phase or transition of this grand cycle. The Vepra, I said information because it's ruled by Mercury, or at least in my understanding, in my beliefs, it's ruled by Mercury. And I think that we are actually in the Devapra age, and this is my argument for it. Or I've already said that a bunch of times. This is my reasoning. Mercury is a chaotic planet, and it is really efficient. It is like think of the two signs that Mercury rules. It's Gemini, Virgo. I wouldn't necessarily say Gemini is efficient, but I would say that Virgo is efficient. And you can see how Mercury going from the symbology of Gemini to the symbology of Virgo makes for a very chaotic planet. But Mercury is all about organization, coercion. You might have heard that in your lifetime, that word, coercion. And if you are looking at it through different lenses of astrology, say, I'm gonna go away from Hellenic, and Vedic astrology, and go into Chinese astrology, not Zhui De Shu, but Ba Zi, because of the way they use the Wu Xing, or the 5 transitions, because each 5 transition is also related to a planet. And the transition that Mercury is associated with is water. Water is the element of merchants, because how else would you get from point A to point B? You can definitely walk, but I don't think it'd be as fast as taking a lake or taking a stream, or the boat on the river. So yeah, Mercury means organization, organizing together. It means exchange and trade. So, going back, and I'm not right. I am wrong. But going back into the idea of potentially the ruling class would exude the most qualities of whatever that planetary energy is of that certain current yuga or era or transition of the grand cycles. If Kali is Mars, that represents warriors, and I don't. So Mars also represents technicality. So I can see how, honestly, it would make so much sense if it makes so much sense if you think about it like that, because Mars does represent technical ability. So for Mars to lead back into Devapra and everything that's going on right now, it really kind of just, nothing is like cut and dry, obviously, unless you believe that. And then I'm sorry that you live like that, because you live in a world that never makes sense to you. So obviously nothing is cut and dry. And that just seems like the perfect, matrix, you know? It's the perfect enmeshment of qualities that would then transition, if this is correct. So just ask yourself, do you believe that the modern rulers of today are warriors? Or are the modern rulers of today merchants? This is not on the topic of the yugas. I'm changing subjects again, and I'm going still back into astrology, because again, I think that if you can just sit with some of the ideas, it will help. It will help some way. And the sun is king in astrology. Again, this is just the basics. I'm not talking about forecasting anything or trying to understand the inner machinations of my mind. I'm just, I guess, thinking critically of fundamentals. The sun owns one sign, and just like every other planet, it's exalted in one sign. If you already know where the sun, what sign the sun rules, or if you don't know, it's Leo, the lion. If you were to think about this in terms of calendrics again, Leo is placed in the point of the year where the sun stays out the longest, and night happens in the shortest amount of time. Longest day, shortest night. It's actually in Cancer, but you can see. It's around that time. The days are longer than the nights. So where do you think it would be exalted? Where is the king exalted? Where is the sun exalted? Some of you may have already said it. Some of you may be trying to Google it right now. Or maybe we don't Google anymore, we ask AI. It is Aries. Aries. Now, I find this curious because of myriad of reasons, honestly. Think about where Aries is in relation to, I guess, biblical texts. And also realize that that's the vernal equinox, where days and night are even. I want to say that again. The days and nights are even. The sun, the king, is exalted when both the light and the dark are even. Of course, the days will get brighter from that point on, unlike the autumnal equinox, where the nights will get longer from that point. So, is the king exalted where he dominates? No. That may be his nativity. The king is exalted where there is fairness. He's exalted in just. If you do understand a little bit about astrology, then this will even help you further. Think about all the things that Leo represents, and then just think about all the things that Aries represents. Leo's like an entourage. Anything in Aries, he enjoys solace, independence. Then how could you rule anything if you were independent? A question indeed. Really don't have any. I don't really have anything else to say. Not much else to say right now. If you want to discuss anything, need help looking for resources or anything like that, please. I'm begging you. If you just wanna, I really don't shoot the shit anymore, unless this is shooting the shit. I will take a shit though. I'm trying to think of fun catchphrases to end this, and not a lot coming to mind. So, no mind, no mind, no mind. Now. I laugh because I'm an idiot. I love you guys.